Welcome back to Lost Legacies podcast. I'm Matt.
And I am Sam.
So today we are talking about season 1, episode 14, Special. As Michael begins to devise a plan to get off the island, he must first drop his distrust in Locke in order to save Walt. Walt! Meanwhile, Charlie makes a discovery while reading Claire's diary. Yeah, Sam, this episode was nuts. So let's piggyback off of last week's, because when I first watched it, and then even when I tried rewatching it, it felt slow, and I think it's just because okay, it's Michael, and last week it was it's Shannon and Boone. I just wasn't really pumped, but now I enjoyed both of these episodes a lot more, and I think because I am looking for, I don't know, I guess more of the character interaction now on this go, At least that's what's standing out to me more. So Sam, what did you think?
I really like this episode. Good night, folks. See you later.
Yep, there you go. You heard it from Sam. He's gone.
I really like this episode. This kind of took a turn that I didn't expect, kind of in the same way that Claire's episode did, where again, we're all watching the show, we're all in it, and we're yeah, okay,
I think I know where you're going with this, because Claire's episode is the only one that has teased the mystery of the island in the flashbacks.
Yes.
So as an audience, we're led to believe or assume that it's all tied together and something was going on in this story before the plane crash.
Yes.
So it's just Claire's episode, and now with Walt's in this episode, there's that similar connection.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's if it's a destiny thing. I don't know if it's a fate thing, but Claire's episode and now this episode sort of, they give this idea that there are forces at work here that potentially brought these people to the island. Now, maybe it was accidental that everybody else just showed up, but there's a reason why Claire is there. We know that for sure. Now we have this idea that maybe Walt was also brought there for a reason, which I think is interesting. I love how this show kind of just sneaks these things in, and I think it's easier for people like you and me to get, because we love sci-fi and we love fantasy stuff. So but we're also fans of just really good storytelling. You tell me a good story, I'm gonna be hooked. It doesn't really matter the genre. But the fact that this show it really does start off as this premise of it's just people lost on an island and how are they going to figure it out. It's presented as straightforward as it could possibly be presented, and then slowly starts putting in these seeds of I don't know, destiny, of some mystical force, of just crazy stuff. There's polar bears on the island. There's more than one. I didn't know there was more than one. That's so cool. But yeah, I think that's part of that's really part of why I like it. That's a lot of why I like the show, is that it is weaving in these little plot threads of some greater unknown. And I guess that's just going to be for us to find out if any of that really pays off or not.
Yeah. Lindelof was saying how part of the magic of this show is the imagination. And no matter what they write, no matter what they put into the show, and it's not just this show, it's anything, whatever's in the actual content, is probably not going to be anywhere near as intricate as the audience's imagination.
Right,
It
right.
could be show, movie, book, anything. And so he kind of mentioned that while talking about this episode, in particular Walt. He said he wanted to introduce these things and these little hints and clues here and there, but never address it. At least like not in this same episode. He wanted
Hmm.
the audience to kind of do with that as they wish. And we've seen it before with Walt in this season, as far as like playing backgammon with Hurley, different just little moments here and there. His talks with Walt, I mean with Locke, stuff like that. But in this episode, we see, like, oh, okay, he's looking at a comic book with a polar bear. Polar bear shows up.
Hmm.
In the flashback, he's reading a book about birds. Bird crashes into the glass plate window and dies.
Hmm.
So is that coincidence? Is it more? Who knows? But those are the little clues here and there. It's kind of up to us as of this moment to let our minds run rampant and figure it out. Brian, the stepdad, certainly noticed. He
Hmm.
is creeped out, man.
Hmm. I think rightfully so, you know.
Yeah. So, but like before we really get into a lot of that, this was uh okay. So when we're talking about Claire's episode, there are a lot of connections here.
Hmm.
This was an episode about parenting. Claire's very much was, except it was like all the stuff you go through before you have the kid. But it also turns out, I don't think we had heard this yet, but Michael's also an artist
Yeah.
who, like, it turns out he couldn't really support himself or his family, just like Claire's baby daddy. As soon as we got to that first flashback and Michael says he's gonna stop his painting, I was like, oh, that's right, I forgot he's an artist. I just love to clown on those artists because that's me.
Oh, you're okay. You see yourself in in
Yeah.
these artist characters.
But then also, this is like the opposite from last week, the Boone episode, because I feel like half of this episode, if not more, was flashbacks.
Hmm.
We were just talking about Boone's wasn't like he had a good chunk of the episode, but everything was so short. There was so much on island stuff, and this time it's the opposite. There's a lot going on the island, but the flashbacks are longer. They kind of are more intricate, and I really appreciated. I think this is part of why I enjoyed it as well. I really liked the flashbacks. I love the character. Well, I didn't love the characters. I love the acting. I love the actors. I think they all did
Hmm.
good. But I was also, man, I was very torn because on one hand, we get this view of Michael from the beginning of the show as this one, like maybe an incompetent dad, or he just doesn't we find out, oh, he's really new to this. So he doesn't
Hmm.
know how to be a dad.
Hmm.
And now we're starting to get into the area where it's like, man, we're really questioning some of his decisions, but at the same time, via flashbacks, we're starting to sympathize with him because we're starting to see the situation he was put in, why he wasn't there in Walt's life, and
Hmm.
everything. I really ended up feeling for him this go
Hmm.
around.
Yeah, I felt bad going into this episode because he starts off the episode in his flashback where it's like he's excited to be a dad.
Yeah.
He really wants to be a father. He's excited for this family, and like it I guess I had no reason to think that he was at any point, like that, just because of everything we've seen of him and Walt's relationship thus far. He does feel sort of incompetent. He does seem like he's just trying. He's not thinking about his son first. He's kind of just like putting himself and how he feels before his kid. Things like that. But I thought that was a really smart move on the writer's part to make Michael this guy who was excited to have a family, and then have that family just kind of slowly be taken from him. Because yeah, that's that was part of the reason why I really liked this episode, was seeing like just kind of just how bad Michael had it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like he and his girlfriend didn't get married, and it sounded like she didn't want to be married. But she was willing to have a kid, and then she takes a job in Amsterdam
Mm-hmm.
without consulting Michael on it, even though they have a family, and she's like, well, we need to take a break and all. And then she calls him saying that she's going to go to Rome because she's getting married and she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want Michael to see his son anymore. Like all of these things that are going on, it's just like,
Yeah.
I can't help but feel bad for
But
Michael.
but I think they really did well because they never really painted Michael as a victim. Like
No,
straight off the
no.
bat, we find out, okay, he's an artist, but he's putting that on hold to do construction just to support his family. Okay, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Next flashback, he's out of work. You know, he says construction slows down during the winter. There's all these little things that allude that, okay, she's supporting Walt and him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he's never the victim in this story. And that's what I really dug. This was a really, it's like he said, like, it's complicated. There's no way for a kid to understand that though.
Yeah.
As adults, we can see like, okay, I see how difficult of a situation this is, but there's no way a kid would be able to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's the root of so many adult problems. It's like this childhood trauma that they were never able to process as kids. So yeah, that's what I feel like it shows Michael's really trying his best. He aren't we all, man? We're
I
just trying.
know. That is the mood right now. Just we're all just trying our best.
Yeah. And it's like you could say whatever you want about Susan, but the point is like every decision she made was better for Walt, you know, not for Michael. She chose her son over Michael.
Mm-hmm.
But then like towards the end you start to find out like, okay, maybe she wasn't exactly, she was never painted to be perfect, but she made some mistakes for sure. She
Mm-hmm.
should have probably shared those cards with Walt. Then again, I'm not a parent. I have no idea what I would do in that situation, you know, because that's someone who's no longer in his life.
Yeah.
Two, she ended up with this man who was upfront with her. According to him, he was upfront with her saying that he didn't want to be dad. He didn't know how,
Mm-hmm.
but he was doing it for her, which right there is another cause for trouble later down the line, man. Like, then again, he could have been making it up. He could have
Mm-hmm.
dropped that on her at the last minute or whatever, you know, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But from his perspective, he was upfront. So it's one of those situations where there is no right or wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's just life. That's just the way it is, and it's messy. And Michael has to figure it out, and he has to figure it out with the help of John Locke, of course,
Of
our island
course.
counselor.
Uh-huh. I'm glad you bring that up, because that's kind of the thread that's tying these two like storylines together, is the fact that um this episode is about people helping each other or not helping each other. It's about what's
Mhm.
best for other people,
Mhm.
and figuring out how to say that, figuring out how to say you don't know what's best,
Mhm.
and figuring out how to help. Yeah, because like that's like, even in Michael's flashback after he gets hit by the car, and he's been in the hospital, Susan comes back and says that she's going to take care of all his hospital bills. It's like, yes, it is kind of also in a way so that it helps it helps him, like sign, it gets him into a position where like he has to sign custody over. But never once did I not think that Susan didn't care for Michael. She
Mm-hmm.
does care for Michael. She just doesn't love him in
Mm-hmm.
in the way that she needs, in a partner. And then when you go to the island, you can see that like Michael really loves his son. He does, but he doesn't know how to show it. He doesn't know how to connect with this kid. He's been missing this kid for what, like 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't. And Locke kind of sums it up sort of perfectly, is that like you still treat him like a kid when
Mm-hmm.
he's experienced more. He's had more life experience than most people have in their entire life.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
he's not a kid. Of course, this is coming from the guy that Michael does not trust, and
Mm-hmm.
who Walt seems to just like keep showing up in front of Locke,
Yeah.
putting Locke in a precarious position. And
Mm-hmm.
then you also get Boone, who doesn't help the situation
No, he
at
doesn't
all.
at all. He just escalates
God.
it.
Oh,
So okay.
Boone.
So there's so many little things in there that you mentioned that I want to go further into. First off, is I'm glad that they're addressing that. It's like, yeah, from the over bird's eye view, pun intended. I don't know, but I just said that because bird flew into the glass. You get it.
Okay.
Damn, I find jokes are better if you explain it and beg for the laugh.
uh, okay.
So that's Matt's comedy tip number one. No,
Always
like
explain the joke.
in a begging manner so people will laugh at you. Um, oh god, I lost my the train of thought now. Um,
See, was it worth it? Was the terrible
I
bird pun
know.
really worth it
Bird's eye
now?
view. Where was I going with that? No, it is a question. Like this is a dangerous place, and I think the natural instinct for any parent is going to be to protect your kid and to keep them a kid as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that kind of innocence. But Locke is absolutely right at the same time. Walt has gone through so much just in this past month alone, not even considering the rest of his 10 years of life.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying he has potential. He has potential. And Locke is all about destiny. So it's tricky, man. But two things happened in this episode which I thought were really interesting. I'm torn because it's like a sign of good parenting, but also like the danger. So when Walt goes up to Locke in the caves, and Locke saying, "No, you can't hang out with me," blah blah blah, yada yada. Michael comes up, super antagonistic. I'm going to kill you, blah blah blah. It wasn't Locke's fault, and
No.
Locke doesn't explain it, and Locke doesn't try to put it on Walt. What does Locke do? He hands Michael that pencil. He's like, "I was giving Walt this pencil as a peace offering." So
Mm-hmm.
he's straight up lying, but he's covering for Walt.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that's a really cool thing that he just did right there. Michael doesn't have any of it. At the end of the episode, when Michael finally meets Walt, and Walt says, "Where's Brian?" Michael says, "Oh, Brian's not here, man." And he stops because you could tell it was like a reaction. He stops and he thinks about it, and he changes his stance. He's like, "But Brian loves you very much."
Mm-hmm.
And he goes on to say he's going to write you and blah 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 and all this stuff. He wasn't telling the truth, but he wasn't covering for Brian or anything like that. He was saying it for Walt, and he was really putting the burden on his own shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Brian doesn't want to be your dad, because that's devastating for a child. He's like, no, this is my decision. I'm
Mm-hmm.
your father. I'm taking you back with me. And that line alone can sum up their whole relationship and can sum up why Walt is so antagonistic with this dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of the first times I think we hear him call him dad is this episode.
Yeah.
That sums it up right there. Michael took the hit for his kid that first time they're meeting, as older. But I was like, man, that's really cool. That's really
Yeah.
cool because that really sets it apart. All this time I'm kind of judging Michael or just thinking, oh, yada yada, whatever I think about Michael. And it's like it's painted in a different perspective, knowing that he
Mhm.
deliberately kind of almost sabotaged his own the way his kid views him just to protect him. And then of course, icing on the cake, they take the dog.
Yeah.
Vincent was Brian's dog the whole time. I was like, oh, I love it. So I thought that was just genius writing. Obviously, a parent of some sort had to have written this episode
Mhm.
because that's something. Just me, a guy of no kids, I would have never thought of that. In fact, I never even caught that the first two times I saw this. It took me 10 years later, technically like 15 years later,
Oh my gosh.
to catch those little nuances in Michael's performance.
Mhm.
Oh, I get it. I see where he's coming from now.
See, aren't you glad you decided to rewatch this with me?
I am. I am. Same thing with last week too. My whole views on Shannon have changed, just the same way. Just like with experience and looking back now, like, oh, okay, I see where they were going with that. Like, all right, I get it
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
Um, Interesting fact. This is the first time I think we've had like a double character flashback episode. You could say like the first two episodes because they're just like one scene flashbacks,
Mhm.
from like Jack, Kate, and Charlie. But Sun's episode, we didn't get any Jin flashbacks. He was just there.
Mhm.
Boone's episode, we didn't get any Shannon flashbacks from
Mhm.
Boone's perspective. But
Mhm.
this time we got flashbacks from both Michael and Walt, which I thought was cool. I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. I'm like, okay.
Wow, I didn't even realize that until you just until you
Yeah.
just said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a scene with
Huh.
the bird. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So let me ask you this question.
Okay, I'm ready.
What do you think are the parameters of Walt's powers? Is he able to like summon things in like, but it's not like he's a telepath or anything like that, or telekinetic. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's more along the lines of like what at least what I think, like when he's feeling an intense emotional response, he is able to summon something, whatever it is he's thinking about at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He sees a really cool bird in his book, and he wants to show his mom and Brian, but neither one of them are paying attention, and then the bird shows up.
Well, but here's the thing though. In that scene, Brian's taking care of the mom because those are the
Yeah.
first clues to the audience. Okay, something's wrong with the mom.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole time, Walt is getting annoyed because Brian's not paying him any attention.
Mm-hmm.
You're not looking. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's feeling any kinds of emotions. I think it's
Uh,
feeling like fear or
or
that
anger.
anger. It has this sinister quality about it,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what catches Brian's attention.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah. So it's not that he was just looking at the book. It's that he was looking at the book and he was getting upset.
Huh. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That works. That works too, because he storms off. He storms off after Michael gets upset with him. Technically, like grounds him to the cave.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then he takes off with Vincent, and he's upset as he's walking through the jungle, and then they hear something.
Mm-hmm.
They
And
hear a growl, and then Vincent takes off, and then holy shit, Walt's being attacked by a polar bear.
I even wrote when the dog freaks out, it's time to freak out.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think the key there that we didn't mention was that Michael burns the comic book with the
Mm,
polar bear.
that's right.
So that would, to me, it's heartbreaking. Like, who knows what it's like for Walt? He's just pissed when he sees that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, this is just this one perspective. We've got one flashback episode of Walt. Our minds can change if at some point we see a sunburnt penguin. If we see a sunburnt penguin with sunglasses at some point on this island, then we could say, oh, maybe it's not just anger. Maybe it's joy. Maybe it's any kind of emotions.
Sure,
And-
yeah, but I think because right now I think we're veering into like the realm of like Stephen King territory where like this kid
right.
gets pissed if he's like frustrated and
Yeah.
angry, then he can summon whatever like creature he's thinking of at that moment. If
Mhm.
it turns into that where he can just like summon penguins that have sunglasses and bad sunburn, I don't think that's any less terrifying.
I know.
I
Because
think it's
that's one
actually
pissed off penguin.
I think it's actually worse.
Yeah.
You
Or he's
know?
not pissed, but the penguin's is like, kill me.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
exactly.
why the polar bear's so upset. He doesn't belong here.
I mean, obviously,
It's
yeah,
hot.
I would be upset too. You know, you tell me that, you know, I exist in this
Mhm.
cold tundra, you know, and my body is built for the specific purpose of surviving these harsh conditions. And then you throw me in a climate that is just the complete opposite.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I don't know what anything is.
Nope.
What the hell is this green stuff? I don't know any of that. There's no penguins,
Mhm.
there's no seals, you know, like there's no ice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that polar bear just wants to be
He
sipping
just wants
on
to go
some.
home, man.
He just wants to go home. He just wants to be sipping, you know,
Mm.
like a pina colada or something, you know.
Mhm.
But no, he's stuck there, the hot jungle.
Yep.
Yep.
Quick aside. Boone, man, he was pretty damn cold to Shannon this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Which is nice because it's
Is it?
well, it's nice to see storytelling wise right after their episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because it's not that we agree with him or we're on his side, but that it makes a lot more sense now. We're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we see. But it's also good follow through. Like, ooh, okay, yeah, like he's really that was kind of the whole point of his episode. Him cutting ties with his sister, like
Yeah.
emotionally, his stepsister emotionally, and
Stepsister.
like we really see that this episode. Like he just doesn't care. He's like, mm. In fact, Shannon is helping Saeed with the map, and they're talking to Jack, and she mentions the fish song, and Jack's like, fish song, and they just keep going. I'm like, oh, that's cute. They have their own little inside joke that Jack's
Mm-hmm.
not a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, though, they start making some headway on the Russo's map.
Yep.
They start finding coordinates.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Saeed always figured there was coordinates or something on the maps, but now he's realizing when you put the maps together, it forms a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Illuminati. But where to? Who knows?
Who knows? Although, well, I guess this is a good time to bring up
Charlie.
Charlie.
Yeah, let's talk about him.
Um, Charlie got to do some things this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the previously on Lost, you know, like that thing came up, and
I was very torn about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Because
was a
it was
little.
very Charlie and Claire heavy. And I was just coming in like, well, wait a second, this is Michael's episode.
Mm-hmm,
What did I forget? What's happening?
mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just I think it's very distracting, but also a little bit of a spoiler, maybe.
Well, I think it kind of just gave it put us in the headspace of like, okay, there's something going on that has to do with Charlie and Claire this episode.
Yeah. Because there's nothing from Michael or Walt in
Yeah.
that intro.
Yeah. So I was just like, well, okay, I guess.
Mhm.
But that was interesting because Charlie was looking for Claire's diary.
Right.
And just from like the preview, when they mentioned that, you know, like, oh, there are other people on the island, you know, and all that stuff, like what I was thinking was that okay, technically I was thinking two things. One, I was thinking that one of the others snuck into camp and took Claire's luggage. That's what Charlie was looking for at the beginning. He's looking for
Right.
Claire's luggage. I thought somebody had snuck in and taken her luggage.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh man, that's going to be crazy. But then I also just kind of felt like Charlie was just acting a little too suspicious for me this episode. And my thinking was, what if Charlie was brainwashed by the others?
Whoa.
Yeah. And so he's like secretly working for them
Yeah.
to get Claire's stuff or something. Like
Yeah.
that was just my obviously neither one of those things came true, at least in this episode.
Mhm.
But yeah, eventually he does finds Claire's luggage and diary with he finds Kate is looking after Claire's luggage, right?
Right. Yeah.
Uh but they have to go to Sawyer to find the diary.
Yeah.
Josh Holloway, you beautiful bastard. Just
That's so good. These last 2 episodes, he's only been in like one scene each,
yeah.
and he steals the show, man. Like every time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sawyer he has the diary. He just hadn't got around to reading it yet. So he
Mm-hmm.
says. But here's the thing, because I was a little confused because I remember this being the episode that ends in the way it ends.
Mm-hmm.
But there was really none of that leading up to it till that last scene. So I see, okay, first off, Claire was staying in the caves, right?
Yeah.
And she was
Oh,
caught while she was moving back to the beach.
yeah.
Charlie was helping her.
Yeah.
So then I'm trying to track the luggage. So I guess her luggage somehow made it back down to the beach with Kate. So Kate and Charlie brought it back up. Okay, it's just confusing. Because my whole thing is like, why was he looking for the luggage? I guess because he wanted to keep it safe. So like someone like Sawyer doesn't go through it.
Yeah, I guess so. Or like it, I mean, it could just be like a thing to do, you know, it's just like, oh, like that was Claire's stuff, you know, like
Yeah.
she's gonna need it when she gets back, you know, like so we should,
Yeah.
you know, we should find Claire's stuff. Like maybe it's that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Um
It was just never really made clear.
yeah,
But
those
then
is kind of random.
like he's really looking for her diary.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm kind of confused at. I'm like, because I was just assuming, oh, he's looking for the diary to see what she was writing these last couple of days or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for help or clues to finding her or something.
Mm-hmm.
But none of that ever came up. He was just looking for her diary.
Yeah.
And then he gets it. And then I do love that scene where he's left alone with it and like he's debating whether to read it or not.
Yeah.
I loved it, dude. It was such great physical comedy from Dominic Monaghan.
Yeah.
But then the next scene we do see him reading it, and I love how like he's like twirling his own hair. It was just so bizarre and cute. I loved it. But yeah, so then he's just weirdo, just reading her diary. But then that's where he finds the clues about the Black Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of kicks off the end. You know, he goes to talk to Jack and Saeed. Saeed reveals that Russo's crew were working at the Black Rock or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And that's what happens when you line up the map. It forms that triangle, and inside of it looks like a black rock.
Really? Is that what they said? I don't remember.
I think so.
Because it was so quick. It was just like one or two lines. Like, and like Jack's like, we don't know for sure.
Oh,
We
Jack.
just have a lot of clues, but we don't know for sure. It's like, God, jeez.
So frustrating. Doctors, you know, if you go into that, like when you go into those kind of professions where you're like, you have to be, you know, just very like analytical, you know, and you know, like very just straightforward. And then it's like, oh, but obviously nothing else could possibly, you know, be the thing.
Yeah.
Have some creativity, Jack. Come on.
Yeah. Charlie kind of put those clues together with Saeed and like, oh, okay, something's up with this Black Rock. We're not going to go looking for Claire in the middle of the night, but who knows what's going to happen when the sun goes up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so then to kind of sum up the back half of the episode, like Walt goes off again. He gets attacked by a polar bear. Locke and Michael have to team up to save him, which is all. It was all well done. I mean, it was like, okay, yeah, I saw this coming. You know, They were either going to keep Michael and Locke at odds for a while, but they already were. So I'm like, okay, yeah, it makes sense that they're going to work together to save the kid.
Yeah.
And they do. Vincent takes off in the process. We don't know where he's at. I think Vincent got a lead role in another show, so we won't see him for a while.
They just, they had to write him out, and
Yeah.
what better way to write him out than leave it with the open-ended possibility of him to come back?
I can't remember Vincent. It's a female dog. I can't remember her name.
Oh.
Madison. Her name is Madison.
Aw, that's a cute name for a dog.
Yeah. So Madison must have got a starring role somewhere else. And she took off.
Didn't they introduce like crypto in Smallville?
Oh, maybe at the same time.
Or did I just make that up?
I feel like Crypto was there at some point, right?
Right?
Oh, I'm Googling this right now.
Although I feel like when they introed crypto was probably at a different point than when Lost. Well, I don't know. Smallville's weird because it aired for like 10 seasons.
Hey, you know what?
What?
Crypto was in. Oh, it's a season 4 episode of Smallville, which aired in February 2005. This episode special aired in January 2005.
Haha.
The dogs look nothing alike, but I'm sure it's Madison. I am positive that's Madison. You just put some like dark brown extensions. She probably had some work done. They all do.
They all do, yeah.
So yeah, all right. That's my headcanon. It's the same dog.
All right, so yet another DC connection. First it was the comic book. Now it's the Vincent the dog could have possibly at some point played Crypto the dog on Smallville.
Oh man. Yeah, so at the end, Boone and Locke are out looking for Vincent, and who do they find? Who comes stumbling out of the wood or the jungle?
Claire.
Oh man, she looks rough too. She looks
does
like
look rough.
Bruised or bloody. You can't tell because it's so dark. She looks rough, and that's where the episode ends.
Mm-hmm. And I was watching it, and I was like, I like as soon as I saw how messed up she looked, I immediately went down to look at her stomach, but I couldn't see if she was still pregnant or not.
Yeah, it was very dark. Like
it was
very tell.
Dark. She was so hidden behind like leaves and stuff. I was like, I don't know if she's still pregnant, and I'm freaking out about it.
Yeah, man. I don't know.
Who does that? Honestly, freaking weirdos, man. Got some weirdos running around on this island.
Yeah, man. It's weird.
Crazy French people, crazy random people that show up and say, "Oh, I was part of your plane crash.
I was here the whole time." Yeah.
Psychos.
Oh man. Yeah, it was a simple, quote unquote, simple episode just because like it felt like not a lot was really happening because most of the plot was in Michael's backstory, in the flashbacks. So that's where the majority of the story was. Everything on the island was just like little hints and clues to move us to the next episode. However, one of the biggest things that we never brought up is that all of this got Michael thinking he doesn't want Walt to grow up on his island. So what's his brilliant idea?
Build a raft.
Build a raft, Sam. A raft. Oh, I love it. I love the idea. As someone who in high school tried to build a raft to travel down the San Antonio River, I appreciate this.
When did you do this?
Oh, dude, it was probably senior year because like me and Aaron got like the work pass, so we were out like before lunch, and we went down to Hobotopia, and we broke down all like the bamboo and stuff, and we lashed it together with like the Boy Scout book, and that was the goal, man. We were gonna cruise down. For anyone listening, there's a San Antonio River went straight behind our high school. So we were going to cruise down the San Antonio River to like say see.
Wow.
Now thinking about it, I think that's upstream.
Uh,
It would have been tough no matter what.
yes, it is upstream because I remember going down it. Yeah, because
Because it all goes down towards like the river outlet.
yeah. So you definitely would have
So
been
we were
doing
setting
that.
ourselves up for failure the whole time. Needless to say, neither of us actually got on it. I think we got our friend Larry to get on it. And as soon as he stood on it, it just sank.
Well,
However, what we didn't have was airplane cushions and metal aircraft hull. I don't know. I don't know how Michael's going to build this raft.
yeah, I don't know how he's gonna build it.
He didn't take Locke's pencil, so good
Hmm.
luck with that, Mike.
I know. What are you gonna draw with now?
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's like, we have an axe. I'm like, yeah, you got one axe and a bunch of trees. We'll see what happens.
But do you know where the axe is?
That's interesting because Boone has the axe
Mm-hmm.
at the hatch, which
Mm-hmm.
nobody knows about.
Exactly.
Ooh, that's going to be the rest of the season. Where's the axe?
Where's the axe?
Who stole the axe? It's interesting because this like we make fun of that, but this was a big part of Law, especially this first season. Like right now, we're only teasing it, but when you think about, oh man, that was Lost, you think about the first season and the whole world, Sam, was talking about what's in the hatch.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? What is it? Man, we're crazy. The world's crazy. It's funny how we all got just absorbed by this television show. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And it's so simple too. Like
mhm,
just just thinking about it's kind of like thinking about TV shows now,
mhm.
and especially this is weird and I keep thinking about it because any new show that I start getting into, it's like 10 episodes or less, maybe 13
Yeah.
tops.
We talked
And
about that.
I know we talked
Exactly.
about it. So yeah, like this is kind of weird because it's like I'm going back and I'm watching something that has a 14th episode that
Yeah.
we're eventually going to get to episode 20 and we're still going to be in season 1, you
Yeah.
know? And so I kind of this is probably going to be a question that I keep asking and that we keep coming back to in the show, but I want to know, how would they do Lost now? Because especially in especially in like this era of television where prestige TV is sort of going, you know,
Mhm.
kind of going away, or at least it's changing. Like you've got like every streaming service is trying to find a show that people can talk about, and then also have like other shows and stuff. Like Amazon is making their own Lord of the Rings. Disney Plus has The Mandalorian, and they're gonna have all the Marvel shows. So it's like the idea of prestige TV is sort of changing, and so I watching this show that is the precursor to all of that, and yet was this cultural phenomenon for 6 years.
Mhm.
I'm constantly thinking about how would they get away with this now, and especially in the age of the internet. I think that was a big thing that kind of helped Lost, was that the internet was still growing
Yeah.
when it was premiering.
Yeah. It was very limited. And I think that's also kind of part of the downside because it's just like today. What you get on the internet, what do you find? Bitching and whining. That's it. It's complaining. If you want to find good quality conversations online, you got to dig.
Yeah.
And that is the way, that's just the sad truth. And you know what? That was the way it was back in the mid 2000s as well. So Lost was the big, like probably our first big water cooler show that we discussed online
Hmm.
because between Lost season 1 and the final season of Lost, you had um not the creation of Facebook, but Facebook went public.
Hmm.
When Lost started, it was still only like college students only. By the time it ended, it was for everyone.
Hmm.
Lost season 1, there was no Twitter. Lost season 6, Twitter was taking the world by storm, man. Everyone was getting on it.
Hmm.
So at some point through Lost, a lot of people started to communicate more and more about it.
Yeah.
And Twitter's the thing, man. It's so easy to love and hate stuff just with a couple of, and even back then, Twitter, your posts were like half as long as they are now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But on the opposite side of that, I found this really cool community of Lost fans while watching the show. Like again, I don't know if I brought it up. I don't even think it was called Lostpedia. It was something else at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where you could find the timeline of people dissecting each episode, especially once like it came out on DVD, once they started like airing and streaming like on the site, on the ABC site. People
Mm-hmm.
were rewatching, you can find all these clues, you can find timeline, all that stuff. It's like, oh man, this is cool. This is really cool. And that's that in fandoms, you got to go look for the fandom to find that,
Mm-hmm.
But so both helped and didn't help Lost, I guess, the internet, social media. But it was interesting. And then as far as doing it now, I don't know. It would definitely be shorter, but we'll see because like we're saying, like this episode, it was all about Michael. Last
Mm-hmm.
episode was all about Boone. These episodes are about the characters. So you can have 20 plus episodes of Lost with only X amount of actual story and plot. It's like,
That's true.
okay, it's kind of spread out through all these character stories.
Mm-hmm.
But as Lost goes on, each season is shorter and shorter.
Okay.
So we'll start to see, okay, it was Lost better when they were focusing on the characters or when they started to do more of like plot driven stuff, things like that. I think what really made Lost successful, especially in the beginning, was that it was character driven stories in the guise of event television.
Mm.
There was no show filming in the jungles of Hawaii. That
Yeah.
alone cost so much money. No one was dumb enough to try it. And so they said, hey, Lost was this huge pilot. Let's go do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it could definitely be done better now. But I think Lost definitely caught lightning in a bottle. Right place, right time. I'm curious, like, what would the world be like without Lost?
Mm. Dang.
Because I think Lost really encouraged networks to take a chance. Most of them were just like, oh, okay, Lost, they have flashbacks. Let's do flashbacks. They're just copycats.
Yeah.
But everyone started taking a chance. They're like, hey, let's do more ensemble stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do more ensemble stuff that had actual plot every episode, that you have to tune. We don't want you missing a single episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole business mentality changed. Oh, here's a bunch of cash. We're going to throw 24 episodes to ER. Is like, no, we want everyone. We're going to always have our fans that are watching, but we want everyone to tune in every single week. It's like the whole television business model started to flip, started to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people weren't ready for that. Because even
Yeah.
Battlestar Galactica went the opposite way. That's how they began. But then season 3, the Sci-Fi Network, when it was still Sci-Fi, not sci-fi, Sci-Fi, they said, no, we need to make this more episodic so people can come in and come out.
Mm-hmm.
Which was like the dumbest thing because like the show really suffered, and I think it never really got its footing again after that.
Yeah, it really did. Don't get me started on sci-fi and their shady business practices when it comes to their shows. It's irritating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm all for that network, man, but they made some stupid decisions. I'm like, I'm not even gonna go into it, but it's just like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Of course, there's lots of stuff and numbers that I don't understand because I don't work for them. But at the same time, it's like you're really, oh God, I don't even know. You're really driving a wedge between your supporters. You have all these people supporting you, and you continue to purposefully like let them down. Like it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just an example of how they went in the opposite direction of Lost and they suffered for it. Everyone else who were failing was because they were trying to copy Lost with the wrong things. Oh, we're going to do a show with flashbacks. Flashbacks aren't what made Lost Lost. Oh, we're going to do a show with this one really cool mystery, and we're making it up as we go too. And it's like, yeah, that's what brought the event television to Lost, but what really made it was that it was character stories.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe when we finish this series, you'll write the sequel, Lost.
No, Matthew, it's going to be Lost Legacies.
I don't know. I hear there's a podcast with that title. We may have to sue them.
That's true. That's true. I don't mind. They'll get over it.
Well, rant over. Yeah, man. I'm tired. That was fun. So, who's your MVP this week?
Yeah, it's got to be Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. He really brought it. He's I really like that actor. I was not a huge fan of his character. But I do know that he played like a significant part in the show. And so I was excited to see more from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I was expecting this. I wasn't expecting to see like this sort of downtrodden guy, just trying to pick up like the pieces of his life, trying to, like get his son back.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't I kind of wasn't expecting to see that. And yeah, I think he really brought it. So yeah, that's why he's my MVP.
Okay.
And he fought a polar bear off for his son.
Yeah.
If I don't make that guy MVP of the episode, like, then why are we even here?
I don't know, man. As far as my MVP, because on one hand, I want to give it to Walt, the actor. His name is Malcolm David Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just wasn't. The reason I was drawn in it wasn't really because of him. It was for the things that were going on around him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Michael, like, no, man, so much of that performance from I think the way you pronounce his name is Harold Perrineau,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. Also from The Matrix, which was he 2 and 3, right?
Yeah, he was Link
and
Romeo plus Juliet.
He's in there. Oh, that's
dude.
right.
He's
I'm sorry.
Mercutio.
You said Romeo plus Juliet. Yeah, he's Mercutio.
Yeah, he is the best on-screen Mercutio I've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree. When you said that, for some reason, I thought of Romeo Must Die, starring Jet Li. Oh man. No, he also comes in and plays one of the villains in Sons of Anarchy, and it's awesome, man.
Oh, really?
It's really cool. He has a really cool. He's a good villain. I like him. Yeah, man. This is gonna be a first, but I think I'm going to have to abstain. Is that how you say it? Abstain. I don't know. I think I just because I got to give it to Harold Perrineau. I don't think there was anyone else this episode that really stood out to me to be like either on par with him or like a good second. I would maybe say Terry O'Quinn, but even then, we didn't see anything new from Locke. It was kind of just more of the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Harold Perrineau is going to take the solo MVP this time.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it.
Cool. Oh man. Okay. Lastly, theories, Sam theories or predictions.
Okay. So right now in the Marvel Comics universe, writer Jonathan Hickman is doing some pretty crazy stuff with the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, they have created their own mutant island nation, which is the island itself is an actual mutant named Krakoa, and they
Nice.
have essentially like left the world, and everybody is now every mutant is living on Krakoa, and they've invited every mutant who is in existence who isn't a superhero to come join them on the island.
Cool.
Since I'm still of the mindset that John Locke is actually a pseudonym for Professor Xavier. And now that we've seen Claire has some sort of special destiny that's tied to the island, and Walt has some secret sort of power that can summon polar bears at will, I am hereby stating that this show is actually a secret X-Men series. And by the end of the series, we're going to get a team of special people, if you will, who are going to be in charge of the island.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's my big prediction.
All right, so that's it for this week. Next time, we're going to be discussing season 1, episode 15, Homecoming. The return of Claire puts the survivors on high alert. Where has she been? How did she make it back? And most importantly, where the hell is Ethan? Yep. All right,
Yep.
man. Well, you can find us online on the socials. You can find me at _Matt Jimenez on Twitter. Sam, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Reel. That's REEL, Texas Weirdo.
Cool. Yeah. And if y'all have any other questions regarding Lost or otherwise, either send it to us directly or just use the hashtag AskSamAndMatt. And we'll either reply to you or more than likely compile them and put them in a future episode. So let us know. Until then, I guess, get
Get
lost.
lost.